Something else about reloading that's a really good feature and something that makes reloading a really worthwhile activity is being able to customize your ammunition. So I'm just going to show you a 4570 load that I use. Now I've got a Marlin 1895 lever action. The 1895 action is a much stronger action than what the original 4570 ammunition was made for. It was over-engineered in comparison to, say, your Sharps style, older sort of antique style rifles. What that means is that we can get more out of it than what you'll get out of a standard factory 4570 ammo that you'll get at a shop. Your factory loads are going to be fairly anemic so that they don't blow up old rifles, but that means you don't get the performance that your rifle is capable of unless you reload. Now, this is some of my 4570 brass. I've been mucking around with that, prepping on some other videos that we've done, and we're now going to load those up. So these guys have been partially full-length resized. They've been brought back so that they'll certainly fit inside my rifle, no problems, but they're not right back to factory specifications. The idea there is that they'll chamber no problems, but I'm not really overworking the brass. Now, just to give you a feel for what I use my 4570 for, the 4570 we have in the territory Asiatic buffalo. They're a big animal. They're easily as big, if not physically bigger bodied than your African buffalo. Certainly bigger than the North American style bison. But they are a big, tough animal. Especially the big male bulls. They have skin which would easily exceed 1 inch thick. So you put a shot into an animal, you need to have a big heavy bullet doing a fairly rapid pace so that you can get that bullet into the vitals and cause some damage and get that animal humanely killed. Now, as I say, I use the 4570. I have here some Woodley bullets. These are bullets that I've recovered from buffalo that I've shot. The Woodley bullets, they're an Australian made bullet. They are bonded, so the lead is bonded to the copper jacket. They make huge, great big mushrooms, and they punch deep into the animal. The bonding means that they don't drop very much, if at all, any lead. Their weight retention is really high. The beauty of a high weight retention is that you're going to get deep penetration. So they've got to go through 1 inch of very thick hide. Basically think of boot leather. They punch in through that. They've got to go through big heavy bone. You might be hitting shoulders, you might be hitting ribs, you might be hitting forearms, major joints. So they've got a lot of work to do. This one here in particular has a long deep cut through the lead where it's broken the offside front leg. Penetrated through the rib cage behind the shoulder on the onside, travelled through the through the lungs, took the top of the heart off, broke the offside leg and was sitting under the hide on the offside. So that's pretty impressive performance. That's got to be near 1 inch wide, expanded, and yet it made it all the way, basically all the way through, and sat against the hide on the offside, having broken the offside leg of a large bull. So you won't get that performance out of factory ammo. It just won't happen. Factory ammo in a 405 grain pill like the Woodley, we are talking 350 feet per second. With the load that I'm using here, we have got just on 2,000 feet per second. I'm just looking for a projectile to give you a comparison. So this is the 405 grain projectile before being fired, and this is the 405 grain. I think the retained weight on this guy was 398 grains, so it's dropped about 7 grains travelling through a bull buffalo. Very, very impressive performance. Now, to get that out of your 4570, we need to be able to tailor our loads. I've got ADI's 2207 powder, much faster than the 2208 you use in the 308 because we've got a straight-walled case. So that gives us our best performance that we can get out of our 4570. So we load our load of powder into the case, and in doing that we go through a further step that you don't do on bottleneck cases. So we've got here loaded into the press already. I've got my shell holder. On the top here is a new die that you won't have seen with a bottleneck case. This is an expander die, and it has a powder through expander die, they call it. I can sit my funnel on top, and what this die does is it expands the top of the case and gives it a little bit of taper to allow the bullet to sit into place. So if I sit that on there, it's very straight, and even though we've got the Woodley's got the nice rounded edge, that's going to be difficult to seat because it's going straight down onto a straight wall. And I'll just give you a demonstration of some stuff ups where what I've done here is I've sat the bullet on top and tried to seat, and it has crushed the side of the case because I haven't expanded it. It's a little difficult to see, but the case has not been expanded, and the bullets then crushed down into the case and of course ruin the case. So we don't want to do that. We want to use our expander to give that little bit of a flare on the top of the case and allow the bullet to seat nicely. Now I've only partially full length sized these, so I don't go all the way to the top of the case here. I go to about a quarter, maybe a half a turn shy of the top of the case. So screw right down, touch the top of the shell holder, and then back out it's about a half turn. But you could adjust that right the way down and touch the shell holder, and that should be sufficient. Now if we have a look at the difference there, we've now got a little flare. Very difficult for you to see on the video, I understand, but the bullet now sits into the case as opposed to one that hasn't been done where it sits on top. It doesn't sit in. Okay, now if we sit that into place, we raise that ram up to the top of the die, we can now load our powder into the funnel. That travels through the funnel, through the die into the case, so that's loaded up, ready to go, full of powder, and we lower that back down. Let's remove that die now and put our seater die in. The seater die works exactly the same as it does on a bottleneck case. The seater for the 4570, as with other straight walls, you can roll crimp them, but I don't want to. We've sort of discussed roll crimping before. I've got a factory crimp for most of my hunting rounds. There's very few calibers that I load for that I don't have a Lee factory crimping die for. I'm putting them under too much duress, and I really don't want to have the bullet moving or being crushed into the case under recoil, that sort of thing. So I give them a good solid crimp, especially for hunting purposes. So we screw that right down so it touches. Again, I back that out. I'll give that a good turn out, clamp that down, and then I can adjust that to suit. So let's put our case back into place. We set our projectile on top, raise the ram up, and see how we're going for just to the top of that crimping groove. Now the 4570 doesn't allow you to have the projectile sitting out too far, so that really needs to go right to the top of the crimping groove. So that crimping groove is pretty much, the whole crimping groove is seated into the case. Now if you have a look there, again it's very hard to see, but there's no bulging of the case. If we go right back to factory specifications, you'll see a bulge where the projectile now sits half in the case and half out. You'll see that bulge. I don't have that because I've partially full length resized as opposed to doing a full length resize. So that's now seated into place, but that flare is still there slightly, so let's whack our factory crimp die in. The factory crimp die, basically exactly the same as how it works for the 308 or any bottleneck case. It's going to crimp down and have that projectile seated nice and firmly into place. That needs to go in another turn or so. That's touching now. Raise that up, give that a good half turn, and then give that a crimp. So that's ready to go. I've got a nice crimp on there now, and again we're ready to go hunting. Let's see if I can find a buffalo.